Alex Belfield.
Geoffrey Durham, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Such an honour to have you on this afternoon.
You say the sweetest things.
I'll tell you why. Well, I'll talk to you about that later, but there's something you've done which I hate you for.
What's that?
But I'll talk to you about that later, because it is annoying me, but I don't want to upset you too early in the interview, because that wouldn't be on.
I want to know what this is now.
I'll tell you later. You're coming to the Newark Palace Theatre on Friday and the Pomegranate in Chesterfield on May 9th.
That's right.
With an interesting show. It's slightly different. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a show. It's a magic show because I'm a magician. But it's actually, as well as being a magic show, it's also a show about magic, if you see what I mean. It's a one-man show, and what I do, I've been a magician for 25 years, and what I do in this show is I try to show you what it's like to be a magician, and actually, how do you make people look down when they want to look up? And how do you, as a magician, get people to look in a different place from where they want to look? And how do you actually do the tricks, if you see what I mean? What's the psychology behind it? What's it like to be a magician? What happens when the tricks go wrong? And I do that by talking about the kind of tricks that I've liked to do over the last 25 years, by talking about when I was a busker. Used to be called Scrappy Lambert, and I used to swallow razor blades. I used to have an act called the Great Soprendo when I did Crackerjack and stuff like that, and I do those kinds of tricks. But I also actually explain things like misdirection, which is this word that magicians have for leading people up the garden path and making them do things they sort of secretly know they don't want to do. And so that's what the show's about. It's 2 hours of magic tricks, but it's a little bit more than that. It's the story behind the magic and what makes a magician tick.
You talk about tricks going wrong. Now, I've done some stand-up entertainment in the past, and when you tell gags, there's nothing worse than forgetting the punchline.
Oh, God, oh, yes, absolutely.
How do you get out of a magic trick that you built up for 5 minutes and then it goes wrong? How do you
it's
get
horrible.
Out of it?
It's absolutely horrible. All you can really say is, does anyone want to buy a trick, actually? But usually, 99% of the time, Alex, when a trick goes wrong, the audience doesn't know. And when a magician's earning his money, the audience doesn't know, and the thing appears to have gone fine. But one time in 100, it's terrible. It was once on a live show in Belfast with a wonderful, lovely presenter called Jerry Kelly, and I do this trick. I'll do it in the show, actually, on Friday in Newark and on Sunday in Chesterfield, where I have a 4-pint glass of water, an enormous glass of water, and I put a piece of paper over it, and I turn it over, and of course the water stays in there. And then I take the paper away, and the water still stays in there. And I did it over this presenter's head, except it went wrong.
Oh, no.
And 4 pints of water went all over him, not only all over him, of course, but on the sofa he was sitting on, and it was a chat show, and other guests had to come and sit on the sofa for the next hour, and the whole thing was completely sodden, and I had nowhere to go, and it was just terrible.
I'm sure you were popular that night.
Oh, wasn't I? Wasn't I just? It was horrible. Really was dreadful. But, there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to say, I'm a magician, I'm fallible, things can go wrong. Thank God usually they don't. I've lost rings that people lent me. It's horrible. It's horrible when things go wrong. But usually they go right. And, the more experience you have as a magician, the more used you are to noticing when something is just beginning to go wrong and sort of take the steps necessary to make sure that you put yourself right.
I suppose when you're a professional like you are, it's great for an audience to actually see you make a mistake occasionally.
Yes.
They love it, don't they?
I talk about that in the show. I do all sorts of things. In the interval, I go around and do close-up magic round the stalls, round the theatre. Yeah. And in the second half, I do basically the culmination of my 25 years professional, but actually 40 years as a magician, including the years I was an amateur. I do the sort of culmination of my 40 years as a magician, and I do the stuff I do best. I do my pièce de résistance of the tricks,
Are you in the Magic Circle?
Oh, yes, I'm a member of the Inner Magic. They've made me a member of the Inner Magic Circle with Gold Star. Now, there you are. They have these various degrees in the Magic Circle. And that's the one I've got. That's the top degree. Something
that's quite topical at the moment is the fact that, when you do magic, the whole thing is that you never, ever reveal the tricks. But there's been some idiot on the TV recently making programmes giving away all the biggest tricks.
Yes, that's right. The Masked Magician, he called himself, though we've exposed him. We know who he is now, and he won't be doing it again. But
But he's made his money in the interim, hasn't he?
He's made his money in the interim. He's told a lot of secrets that really aren't secrets at all. He's told a lot of ways of doing tricks that haven't been done since about 1890. He's told a lot of ways of doing tricks that people still do to this day, and that's a shame, I think, but I don't really think it matters in the long run. I mean, I don't really think people remember very much. I mean, can you remember a single secret? I mean, can you remember?
I can remember. I saw his programme, and do you know what really irritated me about that guy? I want to know what goes wrong, what happens with the tricks and how they're done, but I don't want to know. It's magic. The whole point is that you don't want to know, but I couldn't help myself watching it. And the one trick he did show was how they make a tank disappear or how they make a bus disappear.
By using a sort of kind of a camera trick.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I thought, how disappointing, because I saw that afterwards, and it's ruined all the illusion, because you'd be thinking for half an hour after the programme, how did he do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Now I know, and it's like, well, thanks a lot, mate.
Yeah, well, if you want to see tricks done properly, see them done in a theatre.
Yeah, and it's a shame that the networks put it on as well. I understand they're there for ratings, and it probably made good telly, but it's just a shame to me.
I agree with you, but I don't in the long run think it matters, because I can tell you how to play a violin, but it doesn't mean I can play one. And it doesn't mean that you can't enjoy listening to one. And you can see, all the magicians have to do is little variations now on the standard tricks that man has exposed, and nobody is going to see the trick and associate it with the thing that they saw exposed on the telly. Those tricks may not be exactly the tricks that we want to see at the moment or that magicians want to do, but it doesn't take away from the magic of what magicians are doing. And magic is a wonderful form of entertainment, really is. And I don't think in the long run that TV show is going to make very much difference. It's a pity it happened, but I'm not really too worried about it.
No.
I know personally that there's nothing I do that the guy can expose, because I do my own stuff, So he's exposing standard tricks that are done by what you might call standard magicians. And I don't really think it makes much difference to the good magicians who are working in theatres that are guys on TV exposing TV tricks that nobody much cares about.
I tell you what, the most annoying thing I found of the whole thing at all, I mean, as you've probably gathered by me interviewing, I'm not very good at radio and I have a lot of complaints. You've got to understand. No, Geoffrey, you've got to understand this. And the thing that I found most annoying, he wouldn't even show his face.
Yeah, I know.
It's like when they write a complaint letter and don't put their name on the bottom.
Yes, I know. I know. Well, he was just too embarrassed. He was just too embarrassed. He knew he was doing, because
he's a moron.
Yeah, well.
We don't need people like that.
No, we don't.
Lastly, you've been quite famous for your appearances on Countdown.
Yeah. Yes, I'm coming up to my 100th Countdown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and yes, I love doing that show. It's given me a whole different audience that I didn't have before, really. Because when I was the Great Soprendo, I had an audience of kids and teenagers, and they're now, of course, 20 and 30. Yeah. And so they know me. But there's a whole other audience who watch at 4:30 Channel 4, and also they watch, it's the most videoed program in history, I believe, and it's watched a lot on video by people at night. But basically, it's watched by people who are in at 4:30, and that's a whole different audience from the one I've played before, and I love doing it. It's like being in a club. It's extraordinary, the number of letters you get when you do a countdown. Unbelievable, really.
I think people make the mistake of presuming that program's only watched by old people.
No, it's not at all.
And he's got a huge uni following, hasn't it?
Huge uni following, enormous. It's people who are in at 4:30 who want to watch it. So yes, that is retired people, of course, but it's also students. It's also people who don't have a job at the moment. It's all sorts of people. It's people who don't go out to work, of which there are an enormous number, who look after kids all day or whatever, men and women. And it's just an enormous age range, an enormous cross section of the population. And I really enjoy it, because one thing that Countdown watchers are is fairly bright. Otherwise, they wouldn't be watching it, because they can, largely speaking, have a go at those quite difficult puzzles. And so it's really nice to have an audience of bright people who are interested in the kind of things, for example, that I devised for the end of part one, because I do tricks there and I do puzzles and all sorts of things, do little close-up things that I didn't used to do on the television much. And I found a whole new audience for them. I really enjoy it.
I'll tell you what, Geoffrey, I've got to tell you this. 2 amazing things happened to me the other day.
Go on.
The first thing was a politician answered my first question. And the second thing was I saw a programme which Carol Vorderman wasn't presenting.
She's amazing, isn't she?
Oh, I'll tell you what, she got me through puberty. What a woman. Oh, I don't know how you can sit there next to her. Oh, she's marvellous.
She is extraordinary. She is a wonder. I mean, and what you see is what you get. She is exactly like that. Well, you may have met her, I don't know, but she's exactly like that when you meet her. You know, there is no difference. And Richard as well, Richard Whiteley. You know,
Yeah.
it's just they're just very nice people, and they have no different persona off than they have on. They're just like that.
Not sure about Richard's gags, though. They're a little aloof sometimes, aren't they?
Little puns.
I'm
yeah.
still a little angry with you, but I'll talk about that in a bit.
All right.
You are married to one of the most amazing entertainers. I hope you don't mind talking about this.
No, not at all.
Victoria Wood. I tell you what, I watched a video last night, knowing I was going to interview her,
Yes.
and she is just amazing.
She's extraordinary, isn't she?
You are so lucky.
Yes, I am.
You really are.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I mean, her songs, I mean, that's what I find. I mean, her gags are great, and she does a wonderful routine about, I don't know whether we can talk about it, but she did about wife swapping.
Yes.
Amazing routine.
Yes.
And then there's the ladies thing where she lifts the leg. Can we talk about that?
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
That, I think, is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It is wonderful, isn't it?
And her songs are just brilliant.
Yeah.
Is there no stopping that woman?
No, I don't think so, really. She's always... I mean, the secret of her success, I think, in lots of ways, has never been doing the same thing twice. She's writing a second series at the moment of her sitcom Dinner Ladies, and she's making some changes to it. She never, ever stays still. She does... she's now done, I think I'm right in saying, 7 different 2-hour stand-up shows around the country. I mean, that's 14 hours of stand-up comedy that she's done in her life. And she's done all sorts of different series of different kinds of TV show. When this next series of Dinner Ladies finishes, she's going to do something completely different. I know what it is, but it's not going to be another series of the same thing. She never, ever, ever repeats herself. Whenever you go and see Victoria in a live show in the theatre, you always see a different show, because she never goes back to the same theatre with the same show, unless it's part of the same run. I mean, she has gone back to theatres by popular demand, you know, if the place sells out. But if you see her on one tour and then you see her on another tour, you'll never, ever, ever see anything that you've seen before. She continually changes.
A lot of people were quick to slag off Dinner Ladies, but it made me laugh, that program. I thought it was so funny. And I think in the end, I mean, the viewing figures obviously proved it. It was very, very popular.
It was enormously popular. The viewing figures proved it. She's up for 2 BAFTA awards this coming Sunday. I think that the press gave it a hard time. They did. It's absolutely true.
It's just probably a slow news day and they got nothing better to write about.
I think that's probably true. They've always given her a very good time, the press, and I rather think it was perhaps her turn this time. And, new sitcoms take time for people to get used to them. It'll be interesting to see when it's repeated this year, which it will be in, I think, September, to see whether people get a bit more used to it this time.
I think it will become like Heidi High and Dad's Army and things like that. I think people will look for that in years to come, and they will keep repeating it.
Yeah.
I know I'm on to talk about you. I'm on to talk to you, and it's great talking to you. But as I say, I've got to mention Victoria because she's great.
No, thank you. No, I'd
love to interview her at some point. Is she touring it at the moment?
No, she's not. She's writing the new series of Dinner Ladies, and that takes 100% of her time at the moment. The next tour will either be next year or the year after. I'm not quite sure which, and neither's she.
Well, I'll try and get her on when she's touring, because it'd be great to talk to her. Now, Geoffrey, I'm still angry with you, but I'll talk about that in a moment. We've talked about everything. The Great Soprendo. Now, I have to tell you, when I was a kid, I thought that was the brilliant magic act. I really did. I loved it. There was something about you which made you appealing. Paul Daniels in it, he was a bit silly.
Yeah.
But you were. I always found you very interesting. Why don't you kind of reinvent him and come back as him now and try him again?
Well, I think it was of its time, really. It was a sort of 70s and 80s thing, you know? It was all terribly flamboyant with huge costumes and big pink frock coats and suits and high heels, and it started in the 70s.
Sounds like half the male staff here, to be honest with you.
It started in the 70s and went on into the 80s, and it was very big in children's light entertainment, along with the Crankies and Keith Harris and, God rest his soul, Rod Hull and Emu. And it had its day, really. And, without wishing to to be rude to them in any way. I mean, the Crankies and Keith Harris, you don't see them a lot on the TV these days because they were of their time. And the Great Soprendo was of his time. And I just decided in 1989 that his time had come and that I wasn't going to carry on doing it anymore because really I didn't really think there was anywhere to do it. I mean, I'd done everything I could do. And the things I wanted to do, like, Countdown, for example, or a chat show, you couldn't do that if you're pretending to be somebody else all the time. I wanted to be me. And there were all sorts of magic tricks that you could never have done as the Great Soprendo. So I decided to do it all as myself. And that's what I've done. And I don't think I've ever taken a better decision, to be truthful. Though I do miss it sometimes, and people miss it, and people say, why don't you do it? And in the one-man show, I do a bit of the Great Soprendo.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now, I've wasted too much of your time.
And you're going to tell me what you're angry about.
And I got to tell you this. Now, I don't know how to say. I don't know whether I can say. I mean, the boss may take me off the air for this, and if I do offend you, please don't put the phone down. I will apologise on behalf of the station. But now, Geoffrey, I don't know how I can say this, but I'm a very fat person, Geoffrey. And no, Geoffrey, I have more chins than the Chinese telephone directory. No, I do. And you made me so angry when you lost all that weight. Now, how can you do it and I can't?
Well,
I mean, I was on Baywatch last week and I had the lead role. I played the beach. It's true.
Well, all I can say is that I'd had enough of it, and I decided to do something about it. And dieting doesn't work. And I think everyone who's ever been on a diet knows that it doesn't work. So you have to do something else, really. I mean, it works, but it fails. Dieting always works, and then it always fails.
Maybe it's the fact I'm eating 16 McDonald's a day.
It could be something to do with
Possibly.
that. I had to decide just the foods that I couldn't stop eating once I started. And I just had to stop eating them.
Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks ever so much. God bless you. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Bye, Alex.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
The Alex Belfield In Conversation podcast with daisymedia.co.uk. Alex Belfield.